Yeah, I'm going to talk about platforms today, and this is something that we've been doing for some time, and I'll explain. I'd like to give you kind of a view of where we've come from and how we got here, and a bit of what we've learned during that time, and give a little. The fun part is like looking forward, looking in the future, and see where things might be going next. So I've been doing this for a while. So one of the things that I have worked in Thoughtworks is the global head of our platforms practice, global head of tech for our platforms practice. So I've been talking about this topic for quite some time. And so if you knew me, and I gave this talk in Melbourne last week or a couple days ago, and I think people were probably going, Scott, are you still talking about platforms? Because I think I gave my first platforms talk in 2016, talking about engineering platforms, talking about some of these very same concepts. I just like this picture too. I just wanted to show that. But I have been doing this for quite some time, and we've been building these things. So why is there so much attention right now? It seems like platform engineering has really come to the fore in the last few years, and this year and last year primarily. One evidence of that, I don't think this is why, but one evidence of that is this Gartner's top 10 technology trends. They put platform engineering up there as one of them 2 years in a row. So it's 2024, but it was also in 2023. And I just want to explain what we're talking. So platforms is a really general word, right? So their definition is okay. I'm okay with this one. It's a curated set of tools, capabilities, and processes. So it's not just APIs. It's not just it's people and it's technology packaged for easy consumption. So it has to be self-service, available for developers, and it has to be available to developers in a compelling form that makes them want to use it. And we're doing this whole thing to increase developers' productivity. So the ultimate goal is for feature teams to be able to release things more quickly with less stress, and get more efficiency and productivity, which I will talk about, that word productivity a little bit later on, and the burden, less toil, for the development teams. Now, everyone, I'm sure you've heard the phrase platform as a product. One of the things that I do as part of my job is I'm one of the authors of the Thoughtworks Technology Radar. I've been doing this for quite some time. We've been putting this thing out since, for more than 10 years. And we put it out every 6 months. I don't know if go to www.thoughtworks.com/radar if you haven't seen it. I hope you find it a useful publication. The new one's coming out in April. But we've been talking, most of the time we put things up there and then they fade. We never talk about them again. We only talk about things in this publication that are new. But we have kept bringing back this one topic, which is, applying product management to internal platforms. So platforms as a product, right? And we did that first, we first talked about that in 2017. And then we kept it on there in 2018, and then we brought it back again in 2020. And we, just as recently as a year ago, we put this up there again, because what we know, we see, and this is gathered from our experience of 12,000 people all over the world. And what we found is that when you do this, when you apply product thinking to your platform, it goes well. And when you don't do it, things don't go well. And so we keep talking about it, but I think we're not explaining it very well, because we have to keep reiterating and we have to explain it. So I'm not going to talk about platforms as a product anymore, but what I would like to do is take a little look at where we've been, and we know what makes these things successful because we've been building them all over the world for some time, and I'd like to talk about that. One really kind of dystopian view, negative interpretation of what's going on with platforms is this. So I just thought, I mentioned this, I don't know if anybody was at the DevOps Talks conference here a few months ago, but I mentioned this, and it caused a lot of discussion. But in one view of this is that back in the 2010s, we had people that logged into, or in before that, we had people that logged into computers, and change things manually, bravely change them in production and screw things up, that we called them sysadmins, right? And those folks, when the DevOps came along, Gene Kim and all that, this concept of DevOps emerged and people really latched onto it. All those sysadmins tended to rebrand themselves as DevOps. If you need a DevOps, you know, that you go find an old sysadmin. And, but they were doing more writing scripts. They're writing scripts primarily for themselves to make their own lives easier. But now that we move into the 2020s, I find that that same group of people is rebranding themselves as platform engineers. And overall, it's a positive progression. I think it's a move in the right direction in that we are creating things, we're creating tools and information and knowledge and assistance for developers to make the developer experience better. I think the progression towards platforms is indicative of that. But I think there's more to it than that as well. And I think we've come a long ways since we first started talking about this. So what I did, to put this together, I've talked to people all over the world. So I went to the people that have been building platforms in our organization and outside it, and talked to them and asked them, what is it that you think makes a platform engagement successful? What is it when a company starts to build their engineering platform? What do they do that makes that successful? What do we have to do? And I got a lot of different answers and kind of pulled it all together and distilled it down into a few things that I think are really critical. And I'm going to talk about those. I also have gone now and talked to them about where they think things are going in the future. And there's a few trends that I'm seeing, and you might be seeing as well if you're working in this field, that I think are pointing the way to where these things are going to go in the future. And I think it's kind of interesting. So I'll try and get through this, what we've learned, so we can talk about the stuff in the future, because I think that's probably going to create the most sort of discussion and interest. One thing, this seems really simple, this diagram, but people find it really useful because we've been talking about digital platforms, and it means something different to everybody. So we've found it really helpful to break things down into this taxonomy where you have your customer experience platform, which is how it would be design systems and component libraries and micro front-end frameworks and those kinds of things to enable developers to get their customer touch points out in a consistent way in an organization. And then you have the business capabilities platform. This would be APIs and business events that allow you to recombine different business capabilities in the organization for new revenue streams and new kind of new product ideas. And then underlying all that, we have the engineering platform. This is what I'm going to talk about. This is really the focus of what I'm going to talk about today. But most of what I'm going to say probably is applicable to any of these platforms. And of course, we have the data platform that is, all of a sudden, everybody is worried about their data platform because they want to be able to take advantage of AI. Here's another thing that we found helpful is breaking the engineering platform down into these multiple control planes. And so, this is also to give you an idea of what we're talking about. When I talk about an engineering platform, you probably have some idea, given that this is a DevOps conference, what I'm talking about. But a lot of audiences wouldn't. But we have the version control for developers provided as a self-service, convenient thing. Compliance, so the delivery teams can work autonomously but work safely and be compliant in the things that they build without having to know and get people to check it for them. The delivery plane, which would be orchestrating containers, and usually it's putting things into Kubernetes. Making sure you have the right observability, tracing, alerts, and all those kinds of things. So we used to just talk about digital platforms, and I think it confused people a lot. The other thing that's changed right now that we have come to the place where team topologies is mainstream. I'm not going to. I hope that you have all read team topologies. If you haven't, I suggest you do. And this seems to have exploded. Just in 2023, lots of enterprise-y organizations have embraced this and are trying to reorganize around the team topologies concepts. And the platform team obviously is one big part of team topology's concept. And the platform team serves stream-aligned teams through various interaction styles. And it's good in a couple of ways. It brought a lot of attention onto what platforms are. It had a really great definition of what platforms are that's very similar to that Gartner one that's written by a friend of mine in Melbourne, Evan Botcher. And if you Google what is a digital platform, you'll see that definition all over the place. And it's quoted in the Team Topology's book. And the other thing is, like, it brought the focus onto the platform team, because I think that's really more important. What is the platform team? How do they operate? How do they interact with the rest of the organization? I think that's actually more important than the platform itself. The platform could be a Confluence page of documentation, as long as you have a team that's behaving and providing service to the developers. So we kind of have a better concept of what platforms are. It's easier for us to describe what they are. We have lots of examples all over the world we can give to people. So what is it? What makes us successful in these things? Because I've seen a lot of big, expensive platform endeavors go off the rails, or platforms be created. This is the sugar hit platform, that where everybody gets really excited. We're going to provide these tools to our developers. Everybody loves it at first. And it doesn't get operated and evolved over time, and it eventually becomes a boat anchor that drags everybody down because it hasn't been updated for a long time. So there's a funding, or there's no interest, or something, or there's no team to maintain it. So these are things that you can do to avoid those situations. There's lots of other pitfalls. And I'll just break it down into these three things. You have to set the right foundation. So many times platforms kind of, they come about organically, which is great. It's DevOps teams creating a bunch of tools there's a collection of tools that they have available to people, but it doesn't have a coherent and easy to find identity, and it doesn't have a brand, and it doesn't have the right kind of direction and leadership. So you need to set the foundations right and say, this is a platform, and here's what it's going to be, and here's how it's going to work. You need to then engage the right people. It's very much, with any product, you need to go out and evangelize, you need to sell it, you need to market it, you need to talk to people and help them understand what the value of this thing is, so they want to use it. And finally, over time, you have to operate it. You have to have an operating model that is sustainable over time, and you have to keep, if the platform if it gets stagnant, it's going to die, and no one's going to use it. So let me go through these quickly, I hope. There's like 6 things here I wanted to talk about. The first thing seems obvious, right? Engage and understand the users, which are usually these stream-aligned product delivery teams, right? And understand what the platform, and this is like this is so obvious, but so seldom addressed. The platform has to solve real problems. It needs to address problems that people are actually experiencing. And you don't know what those are unless you actually go out and ask them. So this is user experience research. Like UX people know how to do this. They do it all the time. There's various ways you can do it with workshops, contextual inquiry, sitting down talking to people. But it means going out and reaching out and engaging with them. Developer surveys are a really quick and easy way to get good information about what you need to build into your platform to make it useful for people. I have some more to say about surveys later on, so I'm going to skip over that. And then it's value stream mapping. We find this value stream mapping really, really helpful. So this is going from when the developer onboards into the team to the time when they offboard, which is an often overlooked aspect, and then people's credentials don't get recycled, and random people that don't work for you anymore have access to your cloud environment. Anyway, so it's each one of these stages, there is the potential for waste and bottlenecks. And so this exercise of going through and mapping this value stream from end to end of delivery and path to production is a really valuable way to know what can I build, what tools and assistance can I give to developers that's going to make their lives easier and make them more efficient. The second thing is we have not talked enough about value. We have not quantified or articulated what the value of the platform is to the right people, right? We know if you're working in it, you know what the value of the platform is. You don't have to be convinced of it. And if you're a developer, you want these things generally. But if you're funding it or you're sponsoring it in some way, the value is not obvious. And too many times we have neither. It's a product, it has to be profitable, right? So we haven't actually tracked how much it costs. Most places just, oh, we're going to build some tools and then we have some tools. Nobody actually tracked how much they invested in it. And they don't know what the cost of goods sold is or the cost of services. And then they don't know what the profit is. They don't know how much what kind of return are you actually getting on it. We found that there are two ways that you can articulate the value. This is really important. It needs to be articulated to everybody, to executives, to developers, to a variety of job functions that have different interests. So there's the top-down things like we're going to be faster to market. We're going to have a more engaged workforce. And this is really good for like CTOs, people that understand technology and know that these things need to change. But it's not as convincing. This top-down sort of broad aspirational goals are not as they're not as compelling to CFOs. And that's who we're selling to today. Like, I don't know about the rest of you, but all I hear about in the last couple of years is cost cutting. And how can we do more with fewer engineers? And so the CFO wants to see numbers. And CFOs speak for spreadsheets. So you got to put things into a spreadsheet and you have to be able to show a return on investment. This is a spreadsheet that we use. We plug in a bunch of things. How many workloads are you deploying now per day? How many workloads will you be deploying as you build out the platform features? How much are you spending on the teams that are building out the platform? How much are you spending on the teams that are doing features? Blah, blah, blah. You can imagine the inputs that go into it. And this lets us project over time what the return, because as you can deliver more workloads over time, you can do that with fewer people. And so it allows you to say at what point are we going to cross over and see a positive return on our platform investment? So this is valuable in a lot of ways. It lets you sell the idea of the platform. It lets you say, here's the timeline over which we are going to need to get a return on that. Don't expect to see it for another 2 years or whatever. It also allows us to track our actuals against what our estimates or our projections are going to be. So this is CFOs, it's like magic, putting this in front of them. Like all of a sudden you're speaking their language, and it helps a lot to get support for your platform endeavor. So it's really important to have a loyal fan base at the very start. So it's really important to pick that first team that onboards the platform. So we're getting into the enlist and engage part, right? It's important to pick a team that is going to be not too burdened with features. They're not under tremendous delivery pressure. And they're experimenters, they're early adopters, they're people who want to try new things. If you can engage them and get them on board with the platform, they are going to become your evangelists later on in the organization. And they're going to make it okay and make other developers in the organization, other teams, want to use the platform, because it's really important to get because it's expensive. It's going to cost you an iteration or two to onboard to the platform. If you're busy delivering features and all of a sudden the platform team comes along and says, oh, everybody, there's no features this iteration because we're going to be building in what we'd like you to onboard to the platform. Nobody's going to support that unless you can prove the value of it. So it's really important to get these people on board. And one of the ways to do this, there's Pete Hodson, former colleague, has written, and he's an independent consultant with this stuff. He talks about white glove onboarding. So the platform team, and this is where place where the team topologies come in, the platform team needs to continuously kind of pivot between building stuff and writing code and doing this X as a service interaction style, as team topologies defines it, and the collaboration, where you actually sit down. So you're going to have an onboarding iteration. You go sit with the team. You become part of that feature team. Somebody from the platform team goes and helps them and shows them how to get the right patterns to get their code onto the platform and get their deployment and their build pipelines and whatever it is you're going to offer. And so there's going to be brief, intense periods of consulting that hopefully will become less over time. And you have to, the good, effective platform team has to continuously pivot between these interaction styles and be there and be available to help people. It's not just you build stuff and then send it out into the ether and hope people will use it. You have to go out and actually work with them and consult with them to help them do that. That should be less time. There should be less of that and less of that over time, but it's really important to do that collaboration and consulting. And then if you do it right at the start, you get them on side. And you should start that even before they have something to use. Even when you're just building stuff, you should do showcases to those early adopters, even before you have anything for them to use. That builds support, it builds enthusiasm, and gets them on board. You might notice that none of this is technical, unfortunately. When I went and asked people, you know, what I got, none of them. I was hoping to hear about, you know, how they did their Circle CI pipelines, or you know what Kubernetes tools they used, and how they managed fleets of Kubernetes clusters. There was none of that. It was all about this people and organizational stuff. So I'm sorry if I disappointed you with that. So the next thing that's really important, I go back, is to measure and share it. So once you have the executives on board with the value, you have the developers, you have an organization that's anxious and wants to use the platform, you need to be able to radiate how successful the platform is, and you have to be able to do that quantitatively. So you need to be able to measure your progress and be able to share it and share it with the rest of the organization. So what metrics, big topic, I'm gonna get to metrics again later on in the talk when looking forward and what's going on now and what's going to happen in the future, I think, with metrics. But these are some of the things that we have found useful to measure. And it all goes back to your value stream map. That you should discover metrics. You should discover which metrics in that value stream mapping are going to indicate that you're removing those bottlenecks. DORA metrics are a bit of a trigger for me. Been around the DORA folks for a long time. Used to work with Jez Humble. And when those emerged, we were very excited about them. Most people use them completely wrong. They completely missed the point of what the DORA metrics are. It's not about teams. Teams don't measure that you don't know, because the whole point of the cycle time is from dev complete to production. These are operational metrics. If you're DevOps, SRE type folks, maybe this is relevant for you, but if you're a delivery team, why are you measuring DORA metrics? And besides, it's really I'll stop. We can talk about that later. But yeah, so there are that's a lagging metric as well. It's something, you're not gonna see improvements in the mean time to recovery right away. You're not gonna know immediately if you're having an impact on the developers who are the consumers of your platform. You need these leading metrics, things like how fast are people onboarding to the platform, how many workloads are you deploying every day. And I've tried to arrange them kind of in the chronological order here, from very lagging to the leading ones. And then you need to advertise those, you need to radiate them for the whole organization to see and make them easily available and easily visible. This is just an example of a Backstage. Backstage is great. We're partners with Spotify, and we do many Backstage implementations all over the world. But there's one thing I want to emphasize, and that is that Backstage is not the platform. That a portal is not a platform. Portal is a window into the platform. It's a window into these services and knowledge and all those things that you're going to offer. But the portal is not just because you implemented Backstage doesn't mean you have a platform. So that's important to remember. But it's great, how you need to have a catalog, you need to have a portal, you need to have a place where people where these services are easily discoverable, and they can see, how much how much did their application cost in cloud fees in the last quarter or something like that. Those kinds of things are really important to feed back to people, and the overall success of the platform it's important to make that very visible, and so that you continue to get support from those executives and that value is clear. So now you got to operate this over time, and you have to operate it within a bigger organization, within a bigger enterprise whose business is probably not building platforms, and you need to have an operating model with which to do that. And one key aspect that actually determines success or failure of the platform is this getting the funding model right. There's a lot of different funding models. There's many ways to do this. There's two that we've seen. You see, and I'm sure you've seen these two. In one case, the platform funds come out of the engineering budget. So you have a typical organization, you might have a CX, a CTO, or a CIO that has engineering as one division there, and the engineering gets a budget, and they're able to deliver features, and the product owners are able to get features delivered based on how much budget each of those teams gets for those products. And if the platform team is part of that, that tends to rob from the feature delivery. And again, it's very, in any organization, that is primary. Like the customer outcomes are the primary thing. And for you to say, oh, we have to do this tech thing, so we have to fund this tech thing, and it's going to take away from the funds you have available to serve customers, that goes over really badly. And it's not that simple, but that's the way it looks, that's the way it feels, and eventually that platform engineering team that's part of a larger engineering department gets starved for funds. A much better model is to sponsor this thing from the tech executive on down. So first of all, getting support and moral support and engagement from the tech executive for the platform makes people want to use the platform, and it helps to evangelize it. But also, the engineering department and the feature teams don't see that coming out of their budget. So the platform becomes available the money in the end is the same. It doesn't change the bottom line of the organization, but it changes the way that people behave, and it changes the way the dedication and the priority that the funding for the platform receives. And so this is getting sponsorship from the executive is a really key, and we can talk about ways to do that, but that's a really key success factor in making the platform work. That's a question I get a lot from execs and from leaders, what's the funding model? For a long time I was like, oh, I'm not sure I know what a funding model is, but I'll just make something up. But now I think I have a much better idea of what it is now. And then finally, you got to have a continual backlog of new features for your platform coming in, because it needs to stay fresh. You need to have a digital product has, can't remember, but it has profits, it has compelling user experience, and it has good, fresh content all the time. And platforms are no different. It need to be continually rolling out new features. But the challenge is, if you're taking features from all over the organization, how do you prioritize those? Because people are going to want their pet feature implemented. And this is one way that we found helpful to do it. If you can just rank your backlog, when you do your backlog grooming or your prioritization for your platform team iteration, rank them in terms of value to the business, and rank your backlog in terms of value to the delivery teams. So the business may find things valuable, like maybe you want to put in something that automatically measures conversion rates or gives you user data. It's not immediately useful to the developers, but the business really wants it. And that would fall into the upper left-hand corner. And if that's the case, you need to sell the developers on it. You need to explain to the developers why that's important. If it's the opposite, say you're going to put something in that makes your build, cuts down on the time to run tests, or makes it easier to set up a new project. That's going to be really, the developers are going to love it, but the business is going to say, why am I paying for that? So in that case, you better move the success metrics. So you've got these metrics, you've got this dashboard where you're radiating, and then you need to make sure that if it's not immediately obvious to the business why at least you have this dashboard that says, well, look, our NPS score has gone up with the developers, and we're getting more people onto the platform and getting more value of platforms is going to be. The first place that we're getting so much, so yeah, I'll just briefly say, if I don't have time to talk about all, the way that we instrument things in the metrics and the way we gather metrics is one thing. Having a standardized way for us to describe what the features of the platform are and a way to present contracts and for people to fulfill those contracts of what the platform offers is another one. And then finally, the platform, I think, is moving towards this, with or without AI, it's moving to it's a collaboration tool. It's a way for people to work in a very connected way and to structure knowledge in a connected way. So let me go through these quickly to explain what I mean. Some of you probably saw this. It's very controversial. Can you measure developer productivity? I know we talk about developer productivity engineering. We know when we feel productive. I would submit we can't, that measuring activity or output is really difficult when it comes to software delivery, that the telling, number of PRs, you want to measure, you want to track how much each develop, how many PRs each develop. It's completely gameable, and there's no way to change that unless, it's not a useful thing to do, and it doesn't really tell you how productive. It doesn't tell you how much business value is being generated by the work that you're doing. I would contend that we can't really measure developer productivity, but what we can measure and what we do know is how much waste there is. So we know we can make people more efficient. I go into any organization, do that value stream mapping, I guarantee we're going to find bottlenecks where the right tool or the right change in process is going to make developers more efficient. So why talk about productivity when we really should be talking about how much waste there is in the process and what we can do to eliminate that waste? And we can measure that, and we know what we have to do to improve it. So fortunately, there's a lot of empirical research around this. Our friends from DORA, Nicole Forsgren started the Microsoft Developer Velocity Laboratory. But this is happening in all the big internet companies. There are groups dedicated to improving developer effectiveness, developer productivity, whatever you want to call it. And there's been empirical research. The folks in that came from DORA and are now part of this DevX metrics thing, they are particularly good at these measurements. But there's others. Sierra Jasmine is a Google engineer who's talked and written a lot about this stuff. So we know, not only do we think we can't measure productivity, we know we can measure this other stuff. We can measure developer experience, and we know what contributes to a good developer experience and makes them feel productive and work efficiently. These are some of the things, some more metrics that we find are useful in determining developer engineering effectiveness is a phrase that we like to use. So these are just some things. Yeah, you can get the slides, and there's other probably publications online I could point you to. But these are things like that part of the delivery process, rate of adoption, that's kind of a platform thing. How much time does it take to run your pipeline? How many pipeline failures are you getting? How much time does it take to launch a new service? How much time does it take to find a root cause of something that goes wrong? These are all indications that developers are achieving a state of flow and getting fast feedback loops, which is what those developer experience dimensions are. And there's a product I want to mention because it's so cool. There's a company, DX. I have no interest in this company, but they came from that DevX group, from Microsoft, some of them, and they are professional researchers and statisticians, and they know how to ask questions on a survey. So you can put out developer surveys, but the way you word those questions is really critical. And most of us don't know how to do that. Most of us don't know how to write those. And if you do, you're going to get a lot of fatigue. You're going to get a lot of survey fatigue. DX is a product that randomly presents questions, the right questions to measure the right things to developers. There's no survey fatigue. We find we get like 90% response rates with DX, and when we send out a Google Forms survey, we get like 18% response rates, and it's scarily accurate in predicting some things like attrition. And so I mention this because it's really easy to screw up metrics. It's not only it can be harmful, it's not only can it be wrong, it can be harmful. If you measure the wrong thing in the wrong way, you can actually undermine the efforts. So here's the things you should ask yourself about metrics. Do you have a baseline? Do you even know what, do you know what normal is? And do you understand what the variation is? It's a statistical, it's a process, right? You're gonna have natural variation. Do you know how much that is? Is it a single metric? Any single metric is gameable. And it's only through measuring composite things, taking multiple measurements of different dimensions, that you're actually going to get meaningful metrics that are really going to tell you what's going on. And do you know what constitutes failure? Do you know you have a target you're working towards? And if you do stray outside those bounds, do you know what actions you're going to take? Because if you're not, why are you measuring things if you don't know what you're going to do, if you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know? And I say that it seems obvious, but that so many times is not the case when people are measuring things. They just want a KPI that they can evaluate their developers on at the end of the quarter. So this is what we call fully modeled metrics. I can give you some references to that if you want. I'll quickly go through standardized contracts and fulfillment. Remember this diagram. We don't have a way to describe precisely these things. Although people are doing the same things kind of in every organization, we need a language to be able to very precisely define what the contract that our platform offers, and how we go about configuring that. What the consumer of the product of the platform needs to provide to get a certain guaranteed behavior out of the platform. This is not there are, however, a few products that are emerging that help us deal with this. I think the open application model is interesting. It's an open description. It's much broader than these other two, like Cratix and Humanitech. You may have come across these. They're very Kubernetes oriented, so they're really all about getting containers into Kubernetes there. But we have this concept of being able. They all have a language that allows you to find the contract that the platform exposes, and a way to configure that when you submit a workload to be deployed and orchestrated on the platform. Okay, last thing, please stay with me. I like to look at software not as writing a bunch of instructions for the computer to follow, but as a communication medium. This is a friend of mine, colleague, is Zhu Hao, guy, eccentric, crazy guy in China, and he's written a lot about this, and it created a tool. And if software is actually a way for us to communicate knowledge effectively to each other, knowledge about the business, knowledge about how things get done, then software development is actually a form of knowledge engineering. It's a way for us to structure, it's a way for us to very precisely structure knowledge. And if we apply that to this problem of the platforms, this is a traditional view of platforms, right? A series of abstractions that hide a lot of the details and make it possible for people to understand very complex things. We don't want to think about all of this stuff, the domain models, the documentation, the security threats, every time we write a piece of software. We need to limit what people need to know in order to deliver software. And these abstractions of the platform offers help us do that. Another way, though, to look at it, I think, is that it's a way to structure. It's a way to structure knowledge. We're constantly interacting, not just with the engineering platform, but with these other platforms and with each other, to understand how the business works and to use all of these concepts. The abstractions are necessary for humans to reason about it. But what if humans didn't have to reason about it? What if this actually is this kind of thing that large language models are really good at. And we could kind of substitute this or augment this engineering platform with a large language model to help us to understand, synthesize, and And you want to hear the punchline, right? There's a couple of vendors out there you may have seen, PromptOps, Kubia. These are the chat. They brought the large language model into the ChatOps world basically. So you can just ask. You don't have to know what commands to issue with Slack. You don't know. You don't have to look things up. You don't have to go to Confluence, and it will guide you through the problem of deploying your software. You know, it sounds like you want to deploy something into a staging environment, and you know, here and where is your repo found, and so on. You know, so this is fairly limited, I think, and I just want to show you what we'll look at this as part of the entire software delivery and process where there's many things you have to do. You know, and this is a tool or I don't want to call it a platform, but it's a collaboration tool for software delivery teams that we're experimenting with internally. So it's backed up by the large language model of your choice, and there's various things you can do with it. It's great for domain-driven design and domain analysis, breaking down requirements or broad business requirements. It knows about your architecture, and this all goes into a repository of knowledge for the team. It knows about, it can help you write tests and generate test code. All of these things kind of interact together. And then there's various steps. Basically, it's a bunch of prompts with access to your code base and access to your architecture and access to all the other knowledge. And then that knowledge goes back in. And I just want to show you this is one example. I uploaded a picture of an AWS configuration, right? It's an AWS architecture, PNG, told a little bit about it. And you know, it uses Gemini to interpret that picture, understands the architecture of your cloud, it knows about your application and what your application is trying to do. And this is a particular prompt for doing failure analysis. So it'll list, you know, it lists, here are various things that might go wrong in this architecture and points of failure. We use it for threat modeling, you know, to identify escalation of privilege opportunities in a diagram like that, or in your architecture. Anyway, I think we're going to talk less and less about the platforms, and we're going to talk more and more about how we collaborate and how we structure knowledge and how developers are going to get the most out of these. Use your coding assistants, that's fine, but that's, you know, you get some improvement there, but this is what I think where the real power of large language models are going to come into the software delivery processes. And as long as you, as software engineers, stay current with this and learn to use these tools and learn to work with this augmentation, I think there'll be jobs for them for a long time to come. So thanks to these people who I got ideas from all of them. I don't know, you may know some of them, maybe not, but I just wanted to make sure you knew I don't really know any of this stuff. I learn from others because my job lets me go stick my nose in their business. And here's some helpful links, and thank you. I'm sorry if I went over.